Hey everyone, and welcome to this new video. Today we are going to be using Protopie to create an interactive button sheet. And we're going to be using this button sheet to change the cryptocurrency on this marketplace, to go from Bitcoin to Ethereum, Ethereum to Solana, and changing the elements on our button sheet will affect our original screen. My initial thought for this video was to create a tutorial for a drop-down menu, but to be honest, drop-down menus are a little old-fashioned for mobile apps, and we are slowly moving to using more button sheets right now. So I thought that would be a better idea. So let's get into it. So I already copied my designs from Figma through Protopie. And as you can see here, I have two scenes. One is where I refinish all the animations, and this is the one we're going to be using right now, basically starting from scratch. And as we can see here, we have our button shape element at the bottom of our screen, and also we have a background that is now with an opacity of 0. So a little trick that I want to show you before we start and with the triggers is how to work with when you have a background basically covering all your elements, and you will have that every time you have like an overlay, or in this case like a button sheet. So you can go here to your background and you can block this background and also make lower layers touchable, and in this case you can work as that background is not even there with the elements that are underneath that background. So with that being said, we can start working with the triggers, and the first one is to open our button sheet, and that will be by clicking this element. So we can select that element, add trigger, and the trigger will be tapped. Automatically we'll be selecting that element, and then we can move the opacity of our background to 100%. That's that to give the overlay and animation. And also we want to move this element to the bottom of the screen, and that will be a height of 537. So we select that element, we come here, look for move, and we change these to 537. As you can see, I'm keeping the duration to 0.2. I think that works well. And also, finally, we want to move or rotate this little arrow 180 degrees, so it shows that the bottom shape is open. So we look for rotate. The element is already selected, and we change these to 180, the same duration. Now we go to preview, we click, and we have the overlay, or we have the button sheet open. Before moving on with adding more triggers, we want to create a variable to store the coin that we're currently using. So we come here to variables, we click on plus, we can click for all the scenes, we can change the name to coin. And so basically this is just a flag to tell us what coin are we using right now. So the original value will be BTC, and it's a text type variable. Now that we have this variable, we need to tell our animation how we're going to assign new values to this variable, and that will be every time we tap one of the options in our button sheet. So we can start with Ethereum. And we come here, we select the Ethereum element, we add trigger, tap. So every time we tap Ethereum, we want to assign a new value to our coin variable, and that value will be an ETH. Now we want to do the same thing for Solana and Bitcoin, so we duplicate this. Now we look for Solana, and the value that we're going to assign is Sol. And lastly, we duplicate these again and do the same for Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin, assign BTC. Now we want to check if that's working, so we can activate the debug button here, and we go to preview. So I open this, every time I click, the value should change to what coin are we selecting. Okay, now we can close our debug because we know that it's working. We're not gonna use it anymore. And now we can work on how to close our button sheet once it's open. And here we have multiple ways to close our button sheet. One of them maybe by clicking the background or any part outside of the menu, or by clicking and one of the options we automatically close the button sheet. So every time we in Protopie we have a response that we're gonna be using with multiple triggers. I'll show you how you can work with that. It's very similar to what you do in Python. I don't know if you're familiar with coding. What you do in Python by creating a function instead of creating the same um, code multiple times, you create a function and call that function every time you want to use it. And we're gonna do something very similar here. So we are going to create first the tab respawn, and we're going to start with our background. And instead of adding the animations to close the button sheet here, we're going to just use something called send. And this will send a message, and we can call this message close sheet. Now we need to create the animations to close that sheet. And for that, we're going to use a trigger called receive. And receive will receive the message of close sheet. And here we're going to add the animations to close the sheet. And for that, we basically want to revert the open animation, so we can copy these animations here. And instead of moving opacity to 100, we want to move to 0. Instead of moving to 537, we want to move back to 812. And we want to rotate. And here we can just change the direction. So we go back to preview, we open this. Every time we click, it's closing. So the benefit of using this receive if is now that if we want to use it again to close by clicking any of these triggers or any of these elements, we can just call the receive response again instead of creating the animations over and over. Now we want to add the animations that happen every time that we click one of the elements of our button sheet. And there are multiple things that happen. Like if I click, for example, Ethereum, the button sheet will close, this text will change, the image will change, and this value also will change. At the same time, we also know that every time that we click one of these options, we're assigning a new value to our variable. So instead of creating 3 different triggers for these 3 elements, we can actually create a trigger called detect, and basically will respond to every time that it detects that our variable receives a new value. So the first thing that we can do is every time we receive a new value, we need to close our tab or our button sheet, and also assign a value to these text. So for that, since we already have our close button sheet function, we just need to look for the response called send, and the message is the same, is close sheet. And also, we can also, before testing, we can add the text. And actually, before and close this, it's better to select the element first. So I select the element, I look for text, and here I want to add the value of my variable. So here I can click on plus, look the variable, and that's it. So now if I go to preview, I open my button sheet and I click, it will close because it's calling our response trigger, and also will change the text in this element. So now we need to add a specific animations to specific coins. Like for example, if we click on Ethereum, this should be the icon of Ethereum, these values should be different, and these should show as selected, similar to what is showing for Bitcoin right now. So for that, we can do all of that inside our same trigger, but by adding a condition. So here we look for condition, and the condition that we are looking is the value of our variable. If the value of our variable, let's say we can start with Ethereum, is ETH, now we respond based on that. So let's say if it is ETH, we want to change the background selected, so we want to make it darker. So here we need to look for color, or actually first we can select the element. So we select the element Ethereum, we see that the background it has the color, but is in with a field of 0. So we need to change that. We select the element, we look for condition, and we go for color. Here the color is the same, but we can just select it here, and we want to make this 100, and we want to make the color of the other coins 0. So we duplicate this one. Instead of Ethereum, we look for Solana, and we make this 0, and also duplicate this again, change Solana to Bitcoin is 0. So we go to preview, we open, we select Ethereum. Now that we open again, it's now selected. Now let's work with a check mark. The check mark is very similar. We have check marks on all these other elements. So basically what we need to do is to make the opacity of this one 0 and make the opacity of this one of the one selected 100. So we look for opacity this time, and we look for the check and Ethereum. We want to make the opacity 100. We duplicate this. We look for Bitcoin. We want to make it 0. Duplicate it again. And now we want to make Solana 0 too. So now we go to preview. We open. We select Ethereum. And it's now show us selected. First, we're gonna finish all the animations for Ethereum, and then we're just gonna replicate for the other coins. So what we need to do? We need to change the icon, and right now we have the other icons here, but are showing with an opacity of 0. If we look at here, we have Solana, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is the only one with an opacity of 100. Ethereum and Solana has an opacity of 0. So we need to change that opacity. Here we have the element selected, so we look for opacity, and we want to change this to 0. Then we duplicate, we look for Ethereum, we want to make this 100. We duplicate this one, and we look for Solana, and we want to make this 0 again. So again, we go to preview, we open, select Ethereum, change the text, change the icon, and now it shows us selected. And finally, we need to change the value of our new laptop, because now is Ethereum, so it should be a little more. So for that, we need the text. Actually, again, I always forget, it's better to select this one first. So we select, then we add the trigger, and we look for text, and now we want to add the text of this element. So we change this to formula. We look to plus, and here we want to select this element, and we want to extract the text of it. So now we are taking the text of this element. Click OK. Now we go to preview again. We open, select Ethereum, change the text, change the icon and the text here. We open, and it shows us the Ethereum is selected. Great. Now what we need to do is to duplicate these same animations for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Let me change the name these to Ethereum, and right now I will duplicate it and make the same thing for the other coins. So after you duplicate all the responses, that's it. We go to preview, and now we see that we start with Bitcoin, then we select Ethereum, we change all the values, the elements, and the image, then we click on Solana, and it's changing also. So that's it for this video. I hope this was really useful for you. And if you're interested in learning more about Protopie and Figma, follow me and see you on my next video. Bye bye.